Hey folks, my name's JR. Welcome to DIY Prepper Reloaded. Today we're going to take a look at my EDC or everyday carry. And my goals with an EDC are, first of all, to give me a good set of tools that I could use in an emergency, and then also just make my everyday life a little bit easier. Of course, everybody's needs and preferences are different. This is just what I'm using at the moment. I've been using some of these things for well over a decade, while other bits are relatively new. And like all great EDC videos, we're going to start with the mundane stuff first. Here I got my keys, things for both my vehicle, my wife's vehicle, house, spare bedroom, stuff like that. I do keep my keys for my office and then also things for the church because I'm on security there. I do keep those on a separate key ring just so I'm not wandering around looking like the night watchman with a huge wad of keys in my pocket all the time. Then I have my wallet, nothing really fancy here. I think it does have RFID protection though, and that's important, because they make these little machines now that can steal your card information just by walking by you on the street, and you don't want every little 12-year-old hacker in Russia with all of your information. So RFID is very important. Now, another thing that you could keep in here is something like a signaling mirror. Those are good. And I also used to have a small miniature ferro rod in my wallet, but due to butt sweat and other environmental concerns, that thing did start to break down. So I need to get something to replace that. That was kind of handy to have. Then for my watch, this is an old Winger watch that I think my dad got in probably the late to mid 90s. And then he gave it to me, just normal mechanical watch. I don't really like the smart watches or anything like that. I guess I'm kind of an old fart when it comes to that. The day of the week is getting a little janky on this, so I might need to eventually replace this, but I like having it around because it still tells time, will tell the month of the day of the month, and I mean, the sentimental value. And then my phone, you don't see my phone here because, well, you're looking through it because that's what's filming this video. Now moving on to something that the YouTube masses will probably find a little bit more interesting, and that's my primary EDC folding knife. And right now that is a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I originally stayed away from Spyderco and then also kind of this knife in particular just because I thought they were a little bit butt ugly. I mean, I guess I'm not crazy about the aesthetics of this, but performance-wise, this is probably the best folding knife I've ever used. It's very sharp. It has a nice full flat grind blade, and out of folding knives, this is probably the sharpest one, and it's also the easiest to sharpen out of anything that I've used, even among other higher end folders. Another thing I like about it is that it's very easy to fidget with. I know we shouldn't be playing with knives, but I do a lot of things I shouldn't do, and that's one of them. Has a nice smooth action, lots of different ways to open this. Just very easy and fun to play around with when I get bored. And really, I've only had like one minor boo-boo doing that. I'd first gotten the knife and I was practicing the spider flick and my leg was just a little bit close to it, just kind of scratched it. So no, I'm not, nearly amputating myself every 15 minutes while fidgeting with my knife. Another good thing about this is it has pretty good lockup, like no up and down play, very little side to side play. Also has S45V in steel, which is very good, and the handle is very comfortable. Normally I don't like finger grooves like this, but they're subtle enough that you can still grip the knife a variety of different ways. And also you can choke up on the blade. Like the blade isn't sharpened from tip all the way down to the end. You can choke up like this, or if you're skinning, you can kind of do this sort of a grip so that the tip of your finger is as close to, whatever you're working on as possible. Now, the blade and, well, the overall knife is just a little bit longer than what I would like. I carry this in my key pocket, and the top does stick out quite a bit, but really the performance of the knife, how well it cuts, how easy it is to sharpen, really does make up for that. Now, guys, I know that I went a little while between making videos, and I apologize for that, but if you've been around here for a while and you haven't done so already, or if you're new, I'd really appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel. That'll probably help me produce more content. And also, if you're already subscribed, be sure to like the video, and also, if you haven't done so, sign up for all notifications. That would help me out quite a bit. Now, a knife that I used to carry that the Spyderco replaced is a ZT350, and this knife is really good if you want a knife that also does side work as a tank. It's very tough, very well built, and I got it for a couple of reasons that probably aren't the best when selecting a tool. First off, I did like the tiger stripe. I still think that looks awesome, and Gibbs on NCIS had the larger version of this knife. So, I mean, I like NCIS, and I thought that was cool. So, those are the two main reasons why I got this knife. I carried it for a couple of years, and I decided to move on from it, mainly because A, it didn't carve very well, just the ergonomics of it, and I guess the blade geometry just didn't really work well for that. And then also, you see kind of how the end here is a lot fatter than what's on the Spyderco. It doesn't come down to as sharp of a point. And one thing I like to use my EDC blade for is just letter opening. I know that sounds kind of stupid. It's not really a hard use thing, but this did a horrible job of that. And also, it was pretty difficult to sharpen. I got it pretty sharp now, but it took me quite a bit of work to do that. And I think part of that might be the fact that it has a little bit of a recurve, but also I'm not 100% sure what the edge was ground to from the factory. Another knife that I used to carry that I moved on from is a Kershaw Cryo. I carried this knife for around a year or two, and it's a very good budget option. That's actually the reason why I ended up with this particular knife. I was in a job situation where I wasn't making a whole lot of money, and this was just a very budget-friendly birthday gift for that particular year. Now, some good things about it: lockup is excellent, just like on the ZT350, and it's not hard to sharpen at all, but the blade doesn't stay sharp very long, especially if you're cutting cardboard or doing other tasks that are going to be a little bit harder on your edge. The next part of my EDC is another knife, and it's the Victorinox Swiss Champ Swiss Army knife. Now, a little background on me. I have always loved Swiss Army knives. I think part of that might have been because when I was growing up, that was towards the end of the MacGyver TV series, and all the little boys just love Swiss Army knives and mullets. I didn't really grow into the mullet thing, but I have loved Swiss Army knives since I was a kid, and because of that, I've carried several models over the years, starting from the time I was a teenager to, around 20 years or so later to now. And when I would carry one of the smaller ones, I would wish that I had a tool from another one of my Swiss Army knives, so I just ended up getting this, which has pretty much everything, including the kitchen sink and, nuclear missile silo, pretty much everything in it. It has a couple of different blades. It has your standard large blade, has a small one, which is great for letter opening. Then it has multiple screwdrivers. I love the inline Phillips. I use this a ton. I mean, even for like small things like opening up, a little battery compartment on one of my kids' toys. I don't have to go hunt down a real screwdriver because I always have this with me. Then it has a few different sizes of flatheads. Like this one also doubles as a bottle opener. And I mean, it's good for very light prying tasks. I wouldn't go crazy with it because, it is, a small pocket tool type thing. Then other tools like the wood saw on here are good for like survival tasks, but really I tend to use smaller tools far more often than I do even the blade. One example of that is the small precision screwdriver hidden in the corkscrew, and then also it has a ballpoint pen. I just find myself using those a lot in everyday life. And really, I like having two knives with me. The Spyderco that I showed earlier is what I use as an actual knife, And then this is kind of my mobile tool set that I keep with me everywhere. Now, a lot of people, they're not going to want to carry the pocket brick with them everywhere they go. So there's a lot of smaller options out there. Like this one, I mean, it's just a little 3-layer Swiss Army knife, but it still has, you know, a Phillips screwdriver. It also has a flathead screwdriver. And this little tool here can serve as both a can opener and a bottle opener. And I mean, that's just, you know, it's all useful stuff to have with you. Now, I know that a lot of people would prefer a multi-tool. They're not as into Swiss Army knives anymore. Those have kind of fallen out of vogue. And once again, I guess that's another grandpa-esque thing about me, is I still do love my Swiss Army knives. But I do keep a full-size multi-tool. This is a Swiss Tool X in my EDC bag. So if I need something a little more robust or just has a full-size pair of pliers, this is always close by. And I try to keep a full legit toolkit in my truck. So between all that stuff and then the tools I keep in my house, I think that I have a pretty good handle on most of the situations I could reasonably expect to face. The next part of my EDC is a flashlight, and that's the Olight Warrior Mini 2. Now, I know what some of y'all are thinking. You're probably dry heaving off the side of your couch right now, thinking this is a sponsored Olight video, and it is not. To be fair, I did get this from Olight about 3 years ago, and I tried to replace it with another flashlight that I thought would be more reliable, and then that stupid thing ended up breaking. So now I kind of went crawling back on my hands and knees back to this one. This is something that I probably will replace eventually, but I mean, it's still doing a good enough job that it's still useful. It's very bright. It has 1,750 max lumens with a 220 meter throw, which is pretty good. I mean, it'll work like if you're out in the woods and you need to see down a long path, or you're in a larger building and you need to see down a long hallway. It'll do very well for that. And it also has other settings, including a 1 lumen moon mode. That's very good if you have like small kids, you need to walk around the house at night without waking them up. That'll give you enough light that you don't clip your knee on the coffee table and face plant on the floor without, you know, shining tons of light all over the place. I do like that it has both a side switch and a tail cap switch, and it also comes with an automatic dimmer. So here it's on turbo mode, and when I get my hand too close to it, I don't know if you can tell, but it does dim. This is a very good feature compared to their older flashlights, which I had that nearly caught my pants on fire. I had the previous model of this. I was walking around Lowe's, didn't realize that the flashlight was on the highest mode imaginable, and I started to feel my pants getting warm. And I reached in, the flashlight was just as hot as everything, and I turned my pocket inside out, and then there was like little scorch marks and a hole in that pocket. So this is nice that it has that. It won't light your leg on fire, and it also won't torch your backpack if you stuff this in there and it turns on for some reason. And I think it also might have a timeout feature too. Now, things I don't like about this flashlight that make me want to move on from it are, first of all, the charging is very finicky. It has this magnetic charging cable that you got to kind of mess with sometimes to get it to work. And also, Olights, I've noticed, get their feelings hurt really, really bad if they're dropped. Now, you shouldn't be spiking your flashlight like an idiot or anything, but things happen, and I've noticed that if I drop it, especially the tail cap switch, really starts to act weird. Another thing that's kind of a disadvantage of this light is that it uses a proprietary Olight battery, and you cannot swap it out with things like CR123As or anything like that. You have to use their battery. Now, another flashlight that I've used over the years that I cannot find right now is a Maglite XL50. I carried one of those for a really long time. I wore one out and then bought another, and then Olight sent me this one a few years ago. But that one has high, low, and strobe modes, also uses common AAA batteries. And if you're wanting something that is a good budget option that'll hold up for many, many years, then I think it's a good option. Now getting into what I consider to be the most fun part of my EDC, and that is my concealed carry. Here I have an unloaded CZ75 P01. I've had this gun since the end of 2011, so I've had it almost 13 years, and I've lost count of how many rounds I've put through it during that time. It's been my concealed carry, it's been my primary range toy, it's been what I carry out in the woods while hunting. And probably the best thing about this gun, like all other CZs, is its ergonomics. You can see it has this really pronounced palm swell here that really just kind of sucks your hand in. Now, one situation where it may not be the best from an ergonomic standpoint is if you have smaller hands, because the reach to the trigger, especially for the first long trigger pull, is pretty stinking long. I've even seen full-grown men that kind of have smaller hands that have not been able to do this. It's not an issue for me, but if you're still wanting this gun and you have small hands, you may want to consider getting a reach reduction kit. Now, size-wise, it's comparable to a Glock 19, and that puts it right in that sweet spot where it is still small enough to conceal carry, but it also has a good capacity at 14 rounds. I mean, that's not the best, but it's pretty decent, and you can also shoot this accurately at long distances. And in today's day and age, when you could come across some psycho with a rifle and mother issues, it's always nice to have something that, if you do your job, it can hit targets at longer distances. I may do a full review of this gun coming up soon. If that's something that you want to see, be sure to drop that down in the comments below. Next thing I have here is my holster, and that is a crossbreed Super Tuck. This is a hybrid Kydex and leather holster. It may not be the best option out there. I probably do need to start looking into replacing this, but I've had it long enough that it is literally conformed to the shape of my butt. That's what my butt looks like, if you were wondering. So it is pretty stinking comfortable, and I've had this holster pretty much as long as I've had the gun. I got this around Thanksgiving of 2011, and then I turned around and ordered this basically, I mean, probably the same week or the week after. This holster has held up pretty well. The only issue is that I have to tighten one of these screws pretty much every day because it just works itself loose. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not that big of a deal, at least for me, because I always have a screwdriver nearby, and I could probably replace that screw. But probably the biggest issue with it is the retention is not great, as you can see here. When I'm running, I do have to keep my hand on the gun while I'm doing that. I mean, I try to avoid running. Running's not really my thing since I've given up on myself. But I do have to keep my hand on it while I'm doing that. And another big negative to that is that it would not be hard at all for somebody to snatch it if they knew that it was there. So I always try to exercise good situational awareness and also keep it concealed at all times. Next thing I like to have on me is a spare magazine, and I just keep it in this old multi-tool pouch. This is actually the pouch that came with my Swiss Tool X that I showed in a previous video, and it just happens to fit these 14-round CZ75 magazines perfectly. Once again, that's probably something else that I will be upgrading in the future, but I actually kind of like that it blends in. It's not going to draw a whole lot of attention to me, even if for some reason my shirt rides up, like if I have to bend over to deal with my kid because he's acting like a little nut in the store, or if I drop something. Really all I have to worry about in that case is keeping the gun concealed. And really, I mean, I don't even have to do that because I live in Texas, but I just like to, due to the aforementioned retention issues. Next up, I have my gun belt. I'm not exactly sure who made this. It was a gift from my father-in-law. I think he had ordered it for himself and it didn't fit, and then I got it around Christmas time, so yay for that. And it is an actual gun belt though. It has very thick, very rigid leather. And my only real gripe about it is the buckle. The finish has worn off here on this side. I guess I'm kind of acidic or something. I'm not quite sure, but As you can see, it has screws here, so I can replace that buckle when necessary. Now, the thing with a gun belt, you just want it to be thick enough and rigid enough that it'll support the weight of your gun and anything else that you want to carry, and this does that for me. I have used other leather belts that have been a little thinner for this. They have worked, just not nearly as well. And if you have a choice, try to get one like this where you actually can replace the buckle, because I've had belts give out right where the buckle kind of goes through the leather there. And if that happens and the leather's still in good shape, it's always nice to be able to just repair that one part that needs it. But keep in mind that everything that I keep on my body is just meant to be a stopgap until I can get to a larger kit like my EDC bag. In there I have things like my Grail Ultra Press that can remove pretty much any contaminant out there. So I have my water needs taken care of. Like I mentioned earlier, I also keep a full-size multi-tool in there along with a very beefy Becker BK2, then I have my spare magazine, and also have a ballistic panel inside of my EDC bag that'll stop pretty much any pistol round out there and also shotgun rounds. Then on top of that, I also have other survival odds and ends that if I'm out and about when the doodle hits the poodle, I should be able to get home. I may do an updated video of my EDC bag, so if you want to see that, be sure to drop that in the comments. I did do one about a year and a half ago, but it could probably stand to be updated. Now, if you want to learn more about the guns and other gear that you may want to have to deal with different emergencies or just everyday life, then be sure to check out these videos. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.